Hi, everyone. Welcome to Power Shifts. My name is Joseph Lavoie, and I thought this week I would share with you some takes, some insights I provided earlier in the week to the Spanish Chamber of Commerce in Canada at an event in Vancouver. I'll start with some political observations. I'll then explain how these impact business and the economy. And to close this out, I'll outline what it means for all of us. And of course, what I am talking about is the fallout of the most recent Canadian federal election. So let's get into it with some political observations. The first is a tectonic shift, a shift in political geography. The election saw a significant consolidation. Yes, the Conservatives posted their strongest popular vote in a generation, but more remarkably, the Liberal Party under Mark Carney effectively collapsed the left-of-center vote, resulting in a near total collapse of the NDP, whose entire caucus now fits into a minivan. Why does this matter? Well, it's created a binary political map in English Canada, a dynamic the Conservatives will need to navigate as they seek to build a majority coalition in the future. And that means Pierre Poilievre needs to reach beyond his base into urban and suburban areas. Second, this was a campaign of vibes, not one of policy. Voters chose who they trusted to manage a moment of uncertainty. Mr. Carney successfully projected calm, competence, and credibility, positioning himself as the adult in the room, offering change without chaos. He was not elected on specific policy ideas. Why does that matter? Well, Carney faces massive, undefined expectations beyond solving the Trump problem. His broad and diverse voter coalition has conflicting views on how to practically solve this problem. Expect cracks to emerge with time. In fact, we're already starting to see cracks emerge in basic, simple comms efforts from his new cabinet. So probably less time than we all think. The counter to that, of course, is going to be highly centralized decision-making. More on that shortly. The third, and it's a conflicting dynamic, is that Canadians have given Prime Minister Carney a mandate for change with ambiguity. There was a palpable desire for change after years of the previous government. Mark Carney captured this sentiment, but the specific nature of the desired change remains undefined beyond moving on from the Trudeau era and confronting global challenges. This creates a complex mandate for the new government. Here's what it means for business and for the economy. First, Carney versus Trudeau. How different? How similar? While Mr. Carney comes from the same party and continuity exists on social and climate issues, I'd expect significant shifts in approach and emphasis as reflected in his cabinet. I expect that Mr. Carney's background as a central banker and his international financial experience means he's going to prioritize fiscal prudence, or at least will want to be seen to be prioritizing fiscal prudence and economic competitiveness while solidifying Canada's position in the global economy. He will be, in this regard, a stark contrast to Prime Minister Trudeau. Expect a highly strategic, data-driven, and outcomes-oriented focus with a team built for the moment. He brought 15 new faces to cabinet, including 10 new secretaries of state roles, a convention not used since the Harper government. Decision-making will be more centralized, focusing power within the Prime Minister's office to efficiently manage the diverse coalition he's assembled and respond quickly to international developments. Now, you may say, yeah, well, this has always been the case, Joseph. Yes, true, but I think it's going to be even more centralized than we've ever seen before with any previous Prime Minister. And that's because Carney is used to being a one-man show and will rely on the convening power of PMO and PCO, the Privy Council office, to flex his muscles. Where will he apply that might and muscle? On global challenges, starting with the United States, of course. Given his background and the geopolitical context, I'd expect a strong focus on Canada's place in the world economy and navigating international risks. The campaign quickly shifted from domestic cost of living issues to the larger economic threat and protectionism, particularly coming from the United States. This threat is not theoretical. It's impacting Canada right now. Last week's labor force survey offered a stark reminder of the challenge. 30,000 manufacturing jobs lost in April. Unemployment nationally at 6.9%. The impact is acute in regions and industries exposed to U.S. trade, like Windsor's auto sector, which is now sitting at 10.7% unemployment linked to U.S. tariffs. And of course, steel and aluminum sectors are also feeling the pinch. Economists forecast trade tensions and tariffs will weigh on the economy, pushing unemployment above 7%, leading to more job losses. Carney positioned himself as the crisis leader, and a crisis is exactly what he has on his hands right now. Of course, managing this critical file is going to be front and center for the new cabinet. Dominic LeBlanc is a seasoned minister, and he's been tapped to lead the crucial Canada-U.S. relations portfolio, although Prime Minister Carney has made it clear he retains ultimate personal responsibility for the relationship with the White House. And you know what? As it should be. That is one of the primary roles of the Prime Minister of Canada. And as we know, he plans to deal with the crisis by turning to Europe. And so for those with a particular interest in the commerce relationship between Spain and Europe, the election of Mark Carney represents a positive development in terms of strategic alignment. As I talked about, his extensive international background signals a deep commitment to multilateralism and the rules-based order for international trade. This makes him and his government a natural partner for the EU and countries like Spain. We expect Prime Minister Carney to prioritize and seek to deepen established rules-based relationships like the one with the EU. And he said as much, openly discussing pivoting Canada's trading relationships to deepen ties with partners like the UK and EU. We understand that Canadian negotiators are actively engaged in UK discussions, and this desire to diversify transatlantic links aligns with Carney's vision for a resilient economy. Of course, the cornerstone with the EU is the Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement, CETA. Under provisional applications since 2017, CETA delivered tangible results: 65% increase in merchandise trade, 73% increase in services trade. However, for all the success under provisional application and the strategic desire for deeper ties, we must acknowledge the significant challenges that remain. CETA is not yet fully ratified, with 10 EU member states, including important partners like France and Italy, still needing to approve it. This partial ratification creates uncertainty for businesses and limits the ability to fully implement and update the agreement to reflect today's economic realities. The reasons for this delay are complex, but largely rooted in domestic politics within EU member states alongside broader trade skepticism and anti-globalization sentiments that have gained traction across Europe. And so, achieving full ratification is difficult. We need only take a look at over the 7 years it took to get CETA to provisional application and the headwinds, including the rise of populism across the EU, specific member state concerns on sensitive areas like agriculture, food standards, geographical indicators, mean any further deepening of trade agreements will face significant hurdles. And unfortunately for us Canadians, that means probably access to less spectacular, amazing Spanish cheese. Truth is, we must all adapt to a new reality. Look at last week's deal between the UK and the US. It is not a trade deal. It's a tariff deal. It offers targeted relief for sectors like cars and steel in exchange for specific market access for US goods. However, it does offer potential lessons for Prime Minister Carney. 1. Partial, pragmatic deals are possible, but limited. Securing targeted relief for key industries suffering under tariffs can be a necessary step, even if a broader agreement is still a ways off. Carney may need to pursue a phased approach, focusing on the most vulnerable sectors to stabilize the situation and buy time. 2. Reciprocity is key. The U.S. secured market access concessions. For Canada, achieving tariff reductions will likely require finding areas where Canada can offer increased access for U.S. exports, balancing Canadian interests across various sectors. Not going to be easy. Number 3, the process may be prolonged. Like the UK, Canada is unlikely to resolve its trade challenges with the U.S. in a single negotiation. Carney should anticipate a potentially lengthy process involving interim steps and ongoing engagement, because it's not like Canada has much of a choice. The biggest counter to the narrative that a pivot to the EU or UK can easily offset other trade challenges, or that Carney's election automatically solves Canada's trade future, is the overwhelming reality of Canada's economic integration with the United States. For all the talk and warm words about deepening ties elsewhere, and for all the success we have seen under CETA, the US market fundamentally dominates Canada's trade landscape. Roughly 75% of Canadian exports go to the US. Consider this comparison. When the UK left the EU, its trade was roughly evenly balanced, 50% with the EU, 50% with the rest of the world. If people think Brexit was bad because of the frictions and trading relationships it created, then it is much, much worse for Canada to have unresolved and escalating trade issues with the United States. No deal with the EU or any other partner can ever replace the fundamental economic reality of the US market's importance to Canada. This means that while strengthening ties with Spain and the EU is strategically important and welcome, the resolution of the US friction is always going to be the most economically significant priority for any Canadian government, including Prime Minister Carney's. The April jobs numbers underscore this urgency. If the Carney government is slow to engage or unable to strike a pragmatic deal with the United States, whether comprehensive or phased, we risk seeing these negative economic trends accelerate. More job losses, higher unemployment, reduced confidence, partially impacting investment decisions in Canada. So for businesses, this means paying extremely close attention to shifts in trade policy and potential impacts on cross-border supply chains and market access. And things are different this time. Rising separatist sentiment, particularly in Western Canada, more specifically in Alberta, remains a significant undercurrent. If Western Canada feels ignored or disadvantaged by federal policies, particularly on resource development or trade, which, as we've just discussed, are central to the US file, this alienation could escalate, leading to increased regionalism in regulatory matters and interprovincial matters. I don't want to exaggerate, but the truth is a storm is coming and it will be destructive to national unity. And so I come back to my earlier point. This is a government of change, but not necessarily stability. While Canadians got a change in leadership and a degree of continuity by re-electing the incumbent party, the path ahead is far from settled. The inherent tensions within the governing coalition, the complexity and immediate economic impact of the Canada-US relationship, and persistent regional divides mean that the first year, in particular, is likely to be characterized by intense internal machinations and potentially unpredictable policy evolution. With all of that said, what does this ultimately mean for you? So for those of you representing Spanish and European businesses and Canadian businesses with ties to Spain and Europe, 4 things. Number 1, pay attention to how the new government balances competing interests within its coalition, particularly on economic, fiscal, and environmental policies. These things may stretch the coalition apart. The PMO will be the key center of gravity. Understand that while the broad liberal framework remains, Canada's approach is expected to be more focused on economic strategy and international positioning. Number 2, stay informed on the evolving Canada-US trade relationship and its potential ripple effects on global supply chains and market access. The recent job data highlights that this is not a distant concern, but a present reality impacting key sectors, and international examples like the UK deal offer clues to the potential path forward. While strengthening ties with the EU and the UK is a priority, no doubt it has to be a priority, and CETA has shown its value, the US relationship is like none other, and its resolution is the most critical economic factor. Number 3, engage strategically. Given the potential for volatility and personality-driven decision-making, strategic engagement and government stakeholders, both federally and provincially, remains essential. Building relationships and understanding the nuances of the new power structures will be critical, particularly as the government grapples with the economic fallout of trade tensions and seeks to navigate complex international agreements. And number 4, do not underestimate the importance of regional dynamics in Canada. Policies originating in Ottawa can have very different impacts and receive very different reactions across the country, especially when those policies touch upon trade and resources. This was a consequential election, setting the stage for a period of significant adjustment in Canadian politics and policy. While the broad strokes of continuity are present, the details of how this new government navigates its internal contradictions and, most importantly, confronts the immediate economic challenges posed by U.S. trade relationship will shape the economic environment for the next 2 to 5 years. It will be a period requiring careful observation, strategic planning, a whole lot of rapid response, and proactive engagement. Thank you so much for your time.